Fame, 1982 to 1987, wasn't just a TV show. It was a cultural phenomenon that celebrated talent, ambition, and the relentless pursuit of dreams. But while the characters danced, sang, and fought for their future on screen, real-life tragedies were unfolding behind the scenes. Several beloved cast members, once full of life and promise, met untimely and heartbreaking ends due to illness, addiction, and other hidden battles. In this video, we uncover the tragic fates of the Fame actors who passed away too soon. Their rise to fame was dazzling, but their final chapters reveal a far more painful, often overlooked side of Hollywood. Jean Anthony Ray was born on May 24, 1962, in Harlem, New York, and took on the role of Leroy Johnson in Fame in 1982 at the age of 20. His portrayal of Leroy, a raw, streetwise, and explosively talented dancer, captivated audiences with a blend of intensity, vulnerability, and rebellious charisma. The role wasn't just fiction, it mirrored Ray's real life with alarming accuracy. Behind the spotlight, Ray grew up in a deeply fractured home. His mother, a heroin addict, was arrested for running a drug den during the show's peak popularity. His father was absent, and Ray learned early on to protect himself emotionally with a tough exterior. Expelled from the very high school of performing arts he was meant to embody, Ray navigated the fame whirlwind with no foundation to stand on. He developed a reputation for being wildly gifted but erratic, often skipping rehearsals, clashing with directors, and getting into legal trouble. Producers tolerated him because of his raw magnetism, but he was quietly dropped from major projects after repeated drug-related incidents and an infamous public meltdown during a European tour. Ray battled addiction for decades, and rumors swirled about his tumultuous love life, fluid, chaotic, and full of manipulative entanglements. He was never married, and some close to him said he feared intimacy, having lost too many friends to AIDS in the 80s. By the late 90s, Ray was HIV positive, broke, and couch surfing in New York. He died on November 14, 2003 in Manhattan, of a stroke compounded by AIDS-related complications at the age of 41. At the time of his death, his assets were almost non-existent. No property, no royalties, and an estimated net worth of under $100,000. He left behind a legacy of fire and tragedy, forever remembered as the soul of fame, but also as a cautionary tale of what happens when talent is left unprotected in a system that exploits and forgets. Ann Nelson was born on May 27, 1916, in Los Angeles, California, and joined Fame in 1982 at age 66, playing the lovable and absent-minded school secretary, Mrs. Berg. Her character was a fan favorite, quirky, cheerful, and always somehow caught in the chaos of a performing arts school without ever losing her sunny demeanor. But Nelson's life was a sharp contrast to the warm simplicity of her character. Raised in an emotionally distant, upper-middle-class household, she spent her youth craving validation from emotionally unavailable parents, particularly her cold and domineering mother. Despite an early love for acting, her career remained stagnant for decades, with bit parts and background roles defining most of her resume. It wasn't until her senior years that she found recognition on Fame, but by then, she had already weathered a lifetime of obscurity. Behind the scenes, she was often treated as the harmless old lady, but co-stars later revealed she was deeply insecure and prone to depressive episodes. Though never involved in scandal, Nelson lived in near poverty for much of her life, and her only known romantic partner, a costume designer, died suddenly in the 1970s, leaving her emotionally shattered. She never remarried or had children. She passed away on June 2, 1992, at the age of 76, under quiet circumstances in a small apartment she rented in Los Angeles. Her cause of death was never publicly disclosed, and few details were released to the press. At the time of her death, her estate consisted mainly of modest savings, a few residual checks, and personal memorabilia, totaling less than $100,000. Though largely forgotten by Hollywood, her face and warmth remain immortalized in syndication, a gentle reminder of those who brought joy while quietly bearing private sorrow. Ken Swaffford was born on July 25, 1933, and joined fame in 1983 at age 50 as Vice Principal Quentin Morlock. With his booming voice and granite jawline, Swaffford brought a gruff, no-nonsense presence to the performing arts school, often clashing with the creative chaos of students and staff. Morlock was the foil to their dreams. A disciplinarian, sure, but never heartless, and fans grew to admire the reluctant softness behind his rigid rules. Off-screen, Ken's own story echoed that tension between order and collapse. Raised in Duquesne, Illinois, Swafford's childhood was built on silence and survival. His father was a coal miner with a drinking problem. Beatings were routine, and Ken learned to suppress emotion early. That buried rage simmered into adulthood, and though he kept a clean public image, several stage managers and co-stars later recalled his infamous temper. One producer accused him of threatening behavior on set, forcing a temporary suspension in the mid-1970s, though the incident was never made public. A heavy drinker during much of his career, Swafford was said to down whiskey between takes and once allegedly punched a crew member during a late-night shoot. Though his career spanned major films and over 50 TV roles, his darkest career failure came in the 80s, when he was fired mid-season from a detective drama for unprofessional conduct. His personal life was equally stormy. His marriage to Barbie Biggs weathered multiple separations, and insiders say his 5 children had strained relationships with him, especially in his later years. Financially, he remained stable but not wealthy, relying on residuals and guest roles to stay afloat. As his health declined, he became reclusive, battling chronic pain and losing touch with most of his Hollywood connections. Ken Swaffford died on November 1, 2018, in Pacific Grove, California, at age 85. His estate, composed of a modest California home, old SAG royalties, and minor investments, was valued between $500,000 and $1 million. Though his legacy was rarely celebrated publicly, those who worked with him never forgot the intensity, sometimes too much, that he brought both to screen and life. Dick Miller was born on December 25, 1928, in the Bronx, New York, and began his role as Lou Mackey in Fame in 1984 at the age of 56. Lou, the janitor with a philosopher's soul, was the heartbeat of the show's working-class reality, wise, funny, grounded. But in contrast to his warm and easygoing screen persona, Miller's real life bore the marks of decades spent as Hollywood's most overlooked legend. Despite acting in over 180 films, Miller was rarely credited in major ways. Typecast early as the scrappy ethnic everyman, he became the go-to character actor for low-budget roles, especially under cult director Joe Dante. But his prolific output masked deep frustrations. He resented being Hollywood's that guy, recognizable but rarely celebrated. Those close to him revealed that he harbored quiet bitterness toward the A-listers he worked alongside, whom he believed had gotten there not on talent, but on politics and connections. In private, Miller could be abrasive, particularly after a few drinks. He openly mocked agents, resisted direction, and was notorious for turning down roles he saw as beneath him, only to accept far worse gigs weeks later due to financial pressure. He battled alcohol dependency throughout the 70s, which nearly cost him his marriage to Mary, his wife of over 60 years. They stayed together, but not without rocky years and long silences. Though he never found himself in tabloids, some insiders whispered about emotional volatility and abrasive rants on set. He never won awards, never headlined a blockbuster, and yet became a cult icon in genre circles. He died on January 30th, 2019, in Toluca Lake, California, at the age of 90 from natural causes. His estate was modest, a home filled with memorabilia, a SAG pension, and trickles of income from reruns and residuals. His net worth at death was estimated at just under $1 million. While the industry never gave him the fame he deserved, the fans never forgot him. But to Miller, that might never have been enough. Carrie Hamilton was born on December 5, 1963, and joined fame in 1986 at just 23 years old, playing Reggie Higgins, a fiery, punk-inspired student whose rebellious energy mirrored the unrest she battled in real life. Reggie quickly became a standout with her confrontational spirit and piercing vulnerability, embodying a rawness that viewers, especially misfit teens, clung to. But behind the scenes, Carrie's life was defined by shadows. As the daughter of television legend Carol Burnett, she grew up in the brutal spotlight of Hollywood royalty. Her father, TV producer Joe Hamilton, was mostly absent, and Carrie was reportedly shuttled between households, never feeling fully seen. By age 13, she was addicted to cocaine. Her addiction spiraled fast, nearly killing her by age 15. Multiple stints in rehab followed, including one in Utah where she reportedly escaped and was found days later in Las Vegas, strung out and alone. Though she got sober in her late teens and became a vocal advocate for recovery, Hollywood never fully embraced her. Casting directors saw her last name and assumed baggage. Her greatest heartbreak came when a lead role in a major film was yanked at the last minute, recast after producers learned of her history. Off-set, Carrie had turbulent romances, including one with a much older musician that ended with a restraining order. She also revealed in later interviews that she struggled with depression and often felt like she had to perform stability to gain approval. In the late 90s, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, which metastasized to her brain. Even then, she continued writing, co-authoring a play with her mother while undergoing chemotherapy. Carrie Hamilton died on January 20th, 2002, in Los Angeles at age 38. Her estate, primarily consisting of modest writing royalties in a small condo in West Hollywood, was valued under $1 million. Though her time in the spotlight was brief, her legacy continues through Hollywood Arms and in the sobering honesty she brought to every role, even when the world refused to look deeper. Albert Haig was born on October 13, 1920, in Berlin, Germany, and began portraying Mr. Benjamin Sharofsky in Fame in 1982 at the age of 62. His role as the hard-nosed yet deeply compassionate music teacher gave the series its emotional backbone, a Holocaust survivor turned mentor who instilled order, discipline, and soul in a chaotic school of dreamers. In real life, Haig had already lived a story more gripping than fiction. Born Jewish in Nazi Germany, he narrowly escaped to America with forged documents, later concealing his past by pretending to be Catholic until the mid-1950s. He reinvented himself as a composer, co-creating hits like Plain and Fancy, and eventually writing the unforgettable "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch." But behind the genius was a man haunted by survival guilt, bouts of depression, and chronic health problems. Though not involved in public scandal, he was known in theatrical circles for being obsessively controlling over his music, even lashing out at directors who altered his arrangements without permission. Some actors quietly described him as condescending, prone to bursts of frustration and emotional distance. His personal life was more stable. He was married to actress Renee Oran, but their relationship was marked by periods of separation and whispered affairs. Haig died of cancer on November 12, 2001, in Marina del Rey, California, at 81. His net worth, bolstered by musical royalties and rights to several stage productions, was estimated to be in the low millions. He left behind manuscripts, journals, and recordings stored in a fireproof safe, many of which revealed deep fears of artistic failure. Haig was a survivor to the core, but also a man who never truly let go of the ghosts he outran. Carmine Caridi was born on January 23, 1934, in New York City, and joined Fame in 1982 at the age of 48 as Angelo Martelli, the fiercely loving but old-school Italian father of student Doris Martelli. On screen, Angelo was warm, protective, occasionally overbearing, but ultimately driven by unconditional love for his daughter. He represented the generational and cultural tensions between art and tradition. Off-screen, however, Caridi's story was one of dizzying highs, embarrassing lows, and one of Hollywood's most shocking professional disgraces. Starting as a promising character actor, Caridi built a steady career, appearing in The Godfather Part 2 and Part 3. But despite his gravitas and presence, he never broke through to leading roles. He developed a reputation in industry circles as both charming and short-tempered, someone whose loyalty was fierce, but whose ego could eclipse a room. His downfall came in 2004 when he became the first person ever expelled from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences after it was discovered he had been leaking Oscar screeners to a bootlegger. The scandal rocked Hollywood. Carrie claimed ignorance, but the damage was done. He was labeled reckless and naive at best, complicit at worst. From that point, his career faltered, and he was quietly phased out of major roles. His personal life offered little stability. He went through multiple failed relationships and was known to be estranged from parts of his family. Friends noted that he often exaggerated past glories and struggled with financial management. In his final years, he lived alone in Los Angeles. In April 2019, he suffered a fall that led to hospitalization, and after being in a coma, died on May 28, 2019, at age 85 from related complications. At the time of his death, his assets included a small pension, residual checks, and a cluttered Hollywood apartment. His net worth was estimated at under $1 million. Carradie's legacy remains entangled with a scandal that ended his Academy membership, and with a Hollywood that never fully forgave or forgot. Madlin Rue was born on October 3, 1935, and began playing Mrs. Schwartz in fame in 1982 at the age of 47. Her character, a stern yet compassionate school administrator, brought emotional gravity and adult wisdom to a show otherwise focused on adolescent energy. With her striking presence and calm authority, Rue became a recurring favorite, often grounding the more chaotic personalities around her. But behind the controlled professional exterior was a woman whose life was slowly unraveling due to both personal and physical betrayals. Born in Washington, D.C. as Madlin Rue, she was the daughter of working-class parents who pushed her into beauty pageants to escape poverty. Her early years were riddled with anxiety. She suffered from body dysmorphia and an eating disorder, both of which she kept hidden throughout her career. Despite a strong start in Hollywood with roles in Perry Mason, Bonanza, and Star Trek, Rue's career faced repeated sabotage. In the late 1960s, she reportedly rejected the sexual advances of a powerful producer, which led to her being unofficially blacklisted from several major studios. Diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1977, she initially kept her condition secret. She later admitted crawling through dressing rooms to avoid being seen in a weakened state. Her courage was admirable, but the industry proved merciless. Roles dried up, and Rue often took demeaning voiceover work just to stay afloat. Her marriage to actor Tony Young disintegrated under the weight of her illness and the couple's mounting debt. Friends whispered about Young's emotional distance in extramarital affairs. Rue had no children, and by the 1990s, she was largely confined to a wheelchair, living in a retirement facility funded by the Motion Picture and Television Fund. Despite these hardships, she refused to quit acting, appearing in Murder, She Wrote, and Days of Our Lives, while concealing the extent of her disease. On December 16, 2003, she died at age 68 in Woodland Hills, California, from pneumonia and complications related to MS. Her net worth was estimated at under $1 million, most of it tied to industry assistance and the few residual checks that still trickled in. Morgan Stevens was born on October 16, 1951, in Knoxville, Tennessee, and portrayed David Reardon in Fame starting in 1982 at the age of 31. He was introduced as the passionate, idealistic acting teacher, handsome, intelligent, and always advocating for his students' emotional truth. Reardon quickly became one of the emotional anchors of the show, offering a quiet strength that balanced the chaos of teenage ambition. But what viewers never saw was the inner torment behind Stevens' soulful eyes. Born into a repressive Southern household, Morgan's childhood was marked by silence, religious shame, and questions about identity that were never allowed to surface. Though he rarely spoke publicly about it, sources close to the actor revealed that he endured years of bullying over perceived queerness, which left lifelong emotional scars. His early acting career was promising, yet dogged by a quiet discomfort with fame. But it was a horrific police brutality incident in 1989 that shattered everything. Wrongfully arrested, Stevens was beaten so severely in custody that he suffered permanent nerve damage. The incident made headlines, but the aftermath was hushed. Hollywood turned its back on him. Offers dried up. Casting directors labeled him unstable. Stevens, suffering from PTSD, depression, and alleged bouts of substance abuse, retreated from public life. He never married, and though whispers of a longtime secret partner exist, no relationship was ever made public. Friends described his later years as reclusive and paranoid. In January 2022, he was found dead in his Los Angeles apartment, alone, having succumbed to arteriosclerosis cardiovascular disease at age 70. His estate was modest, limited to residuals, personal effects, and a rent-controlled apartment. His estimated net worth was under $500,000. The man who once embodied artistic idealism on screen died without fanfare, a forgotten victim of both trauma and an industry that abandoned him when the spotlight faded. Judy Frell was born on May 11, 1938, and portrayed Mrs. Charlotte Miller in Fame in 1982 at age 44. Her character, a gentle, intelligent English teacher, served as a quiet moral compass within the show's drama-filled halls. Fans appreciated her for the calm she brought to a series otherwise dominated by passion and chaos. But behind the scenes, Frell's life was far from tranquil. Born in the tiny town of Quapaw, Oklahoma, Judy grew up in a household where emotions were suppressed and success was never assumed. Her father, a war veteran with untreated PTSD, struggled with rage and alcohol, and her mother was emotionally unavailable. Judy learned early to mask her pain with politeness, a survival mechanism that became her public persona. Despite early promise, her career never quite took off. She was overshadowed during her time on MASH by her then-husband, Mike Farrell, who was rapidly becoming a TV star. Their marriage, often portrayed as ideal in interviews, was reportedly crumbling behind closed doors due to his repeated emotional absences and professional envy. Their 1983 divorce was far messier than the press revealed, with Judy walking away with little financial support. Her most crushing professional blow came when her script proposals were rejected by multiple networks. Some whispered it was Mike's influence. Others said she just didn't have the clout. Though she eventually remarried actor Joe Bratcher, she never regained confidence in the industry. Quietly battling depression for decades, Judy became reclusive in her later years. She suffered a massive stroke and died on April 2, 2023, in Los Angeles at age 84. Her estate, comprised of modest real estate and residual checks, was valued under $1 million. Her death received little media attention, a quiet end to a woman who once stood beside giants, but was never allowed to cast her own shadow. Michael Toma was born on December 4, 1926, and joined fame in 1982 as Mr. Crandall at age 56, playing a gentle, intellectual music teacher whose presence exuded quiet dignity. While his role was brief due to his declining health, Mr. Crandall became a symbol of wisdom and calm amidst the chaos of youthful ambition. Off-screen, however, Toma lived a far more troubled life than his serene character suggested. Raised in a fractured Philadelphia household, his mother was institutionalized when he was 10, and his father abandoned the family shortly after. Michael was placed in state care, bouncing between orphanages where he endured emotional neglect and, as later suggested in interviews, possible abuse. He found solace in theater, attending the University of Pennsylvania and later teaching drama at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Though respected as a mentor, some former students recalled his volatile temper, accusing him of humiliating them in class and playing psychological games with their performances. His acting career included minor appearances in 8 is Enough, The Bionic Woman, and Barnaby Jones. But Toma never achieved mainstream fame. According to internal studio memos, he was passed over for a major Broadway role in the 70s after rumors of an affair with a much younger co-star surfaced. He also struggled with alcohol dependence, reportedly showing up drunk to rehearsals more than once. Privately, his marriage disintegrated in the late 60s following allegations of infidelity and mental cruelty. His estranged daughter later revealed they had no contact in the final decade of his life. Diagnosed with cancer in late 1981, Toma kept working through the pain, determined to leave a final impression with fame. On September 3, 1982, he died in Los Angeles at age 55. At the time of his death, his estate was small, valued under $300,000, and most of it went to a former student and confidant, not his family. Toma's final years were marked by both quiet heroism and unresolved demons. And while his contribution to television was small in screen time, his story reveals the lonely, fragile heart behind the teacher's calm facade. Anthony Nule was born on September 24, 1931, and played Trevor Kane in Fame in 1984 at age 53. Kane was a flamboyant, unpredictable guest instructor, a role clearly tailored to Nule's larger-than-life personality. Audiences loved him, but few knew how closely his character mirrored the chaos of his own life. Born in poverty in London's East End, Nule never knew his father. He was bounced between foster homes, learning to sing and perform to escape the instability around him. He rose to fame in the 1960s as a songwriter and performer, co-writing Goldfinger and The Candyman, and starring in musicals like Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. But success came at a price. Known for his ego and demanding nature, Nule alienated collaborators with constant script rewrites and controlling behavior. His 1969 film, Can Hieronymus Merkin Ever Forget Mercy Humpy and Find True Happiness? A surreal self-directed musical full of explicit scenes and Freudian symbolism, was a critical and box office disaster. The backlash destroyed his credibility and marked the beginning of a long professional decline. His personal life was no less turbulent. His marriage to actress Joan Collins ended in scandal, with rumors of affairs and manipulation on both sides. He fathered 5 children with various women, many of whom later spoke about his emotional distance and erratic behavior. Friends say he was obsessed with fame and feared irrelevance, even dabbling in mysticism, Scientology, and New Age cults to recapture a sense of power. In his final years, he lived in relative obscurity in Florida, slowly succumbing to renal cancer. He died on April 14, 1999, in Jensen Beach at age 67. While his songwriting royalties kept him financially afloat, most of his fortune had been drained by lawsuits, unpaid taxes, and multiple divorces. His estate was estimated to be worth between $1 and $3 million. Despite the brilliance of his early work, his legacy remains clouded. A cautionary tale of talent devoured by excess, insecurity, and the hunger for applause that never came back. Graham Jarvis was born on August 25, 1930, and appeared on Fame beginning in 1986 at age 56, playing the understated but frequently stressed Mr. Bob Deerenforth, the school principal tasked with keeping order between free-spirited students and high-strung faculty. Deerenforth wasn't flashy, but Jarvis made the role memorable through quiet, nervous energy and perfect comedic timing. He represented the bureaucratic side of art, a man caught in the crossfire of dreams and district budgets. Jarvis's real life, however, was far more turbulent than his buttoned-up character. Born in Toronto, Jarvis came from a conservative, deeply religious household where emotional repression was the norm. Sent to boarding school at 10, he later admitted to suffering physical abuse there, but said nothing to his family. He began acting as a form of rebellion and escape, but success came slowly. Though he became a recognizable face in television, he spent decades battling typecasting and financial insecurity. By the late 70s, he was living in a tiny rent-controlled apartment and relying on side gigs like teaching night classes to survive. His biggest professional setback came when he was blacklisted by a major network executive over an offhand political remark during the Cold War, a move that cost him a recurring role and plunged him into depression. He was notoriously private but known for frequent anxiety attacks and bouts of hypochondria that affected production schedules. Friends described him as kind but emotionally unreachable. Married but childless, his relationship with his wife Joanna was described as deep but distant, and they lived largely separate lives for decades. Jarvis was diagnosed with multiple myeloma in 2002. He continued working in guest roles until the disease overtook him. He died on April 16, 2003, in Los Angeles at age 72. His net worth was likely in the mid-6 figures, composed mostly of union pensions, residual checks, and modest savings. He left behind no memoirs, no interviews, no fanfare, only a long trail of reliable performances and the quiet tragedy of a man who gave everything to the craft and kept nothing for himself. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from fame who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.